let's start with Kim Kardashian Hollywood. This is, I think you told me at breakfast, this is the biggest hit Glue's ever had, yeah?
Yeah, by far. It's almost 4 to 5x bigger than our previous biggest one, which was Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter, right.
Yeah, I mean, how it came about, we were always been doing a lot of Hollywood games, right? So our CEO was actually in Hollywood making deals with MGM. We have RoboCop, Hercules this year, Terminator, James Bond. So he was out there. We had a successful engine, which had worked before. It's called Stardom. Hollywood was the game, and we were trying to make like a low-cost way of working on something successful, but solving the user acquisition problem, which has gotten more and more expensive.
So did it start with the engine? You guys looked at Stardom Hollywood and said, let's go find a celebrity to fit here?
Pretty much. That was like, we have a game which monetizes really well, but we cannot drive installs to it, and it was getting too expensive to drive installs to it. And Kim Kardashian's social appeal was just amazing.
How many fans does she have?
So she has close to around 25, 30 million on Facebook and around the same on Instagram. I mean, anything she will post gets around 500,000 likes. So, I mean, we saw when we actually released the game, like just her tweet made it go from like 100 installs a minute to more than 1,000 installs a minute. So her reach was pretty amazing, and that ended up being like the perfect match for that engine.
So what happened? Your CEO just was dialing up celebrities, and Kim answered and said, sure?
And amazingly, you know, whatever you might have heard about her, she's a very smart businesswoman. She knows exactly what her fans, what her audience wants, and was very humble, very involved throughout the whole.
I read that. So tell us how involved.
Very she's very picky about her appearance in the game, and what dresses and everything. Like we try to time everything with her, reality TV show, and yeah, she's very, very involved creatively.
When you say time things with the TV show, you mean events or what kind of stuff?
Like when she goes to Australia, we try to make sure that update comes out at the same time. Like initially we were not doing that, but then ever since we started doing that, we see much better performance, like 2-3x the revenue at that time. Like when she got married on the TV show, that's when we launched that you can actually get married in the game, and even introduced gay marriages, and that again, like just through the charts.
Nice. You mentioned the performance of the game. How do you measure the success of the game? We all read the news and see the stuff about, this game's supposedly going to do 200 million this year, or Kim's making X amount, or rumored to have this percent. But inside of Glue, what KPIs, what metrics do you guys follow most closely?
So there's the standard ones, right? There's like the game has to retain, keep the users engaged, and monetize. So ARP, DAU, or average revenue per daily active per paying user is very important. But one thing most people, I don't know if everybody looks at it, is like we have learned our lessons is downloadability is a very important metric for us. And we start looking at it way before we even green light something, or it's like, okay, if you're going to have a pitch for the game internally, you want to build it, tell me that this game will get downloaded first, right? And for something like Kim Kardashian, it's obvious, right?
Is there an example? You guys have put out so many titles of a game that wasn't as downloadable as you might have thought?
Yeah,
what type of stuff are you talking about?
Like Eternity Warriors 3, for example, monetizes really well. That game has made, I think, upwards of $10 million in its lifetime. And when we saw the beta numbers, we got very excited in terms of how well it was monetizing, but it wasn't downloading, and it was for a niche market, right? It was for an Asian market, and we did not figure out, or we did not think about the fact that it does not download well in Asia, outside of Asia, in US or Europe, and that's where all our expectations, were a little bit wrong.
Interesting. Okay, so got it. So those are the metrics you guys watch. Did you expect the success of Kim Kardashian Hollywood? I mean,
yes,
of
course.
You knew it was all coming. And as the VP of Android, had you prepared the servers or whatever? I don't even know if that's still, I'm not a technical guy, an issue. I mean, was the capacity there? I read somewhere that you guys did like 1.6 million in the first 5 days or something.
So no, we did not expect close to being like, we were all very pleasantly surprised at the success of it. To the fact that I was actually on the second weekend of the game celebrating with my team at a happy hour drinking, and of course our servers broke down because it hit the peak load. And I'm getting text messages. Fix the Kardashian game was like the third most trending thing on Twitter. And people were complaining. They were like, I was in the middle of the photo shoot, fix this shit. You know, it was just crazy. So yeah, we learned our lessons in terms of like, we did not expect it. And then we ramped up fast.
What do you guys use for the back end stuff? Like, what exactly did you need to fix?
It was the capacity. Like, it did not, like, there was features in the game which we were not expecting to go crazy querying the servers the way they were. So it was just, at that point, it was just slapping on more horsepower kind of thing. But then for future games now, you have to keep in mind the scale, and the server team is more aware, and we do a better job trying to expect the load.
So will there be a Kim Kardashian 2 then? You guys have put out a lot of sequels in the past. I don't know what your strategy's like there.
So our strategy is definitely shifting. We've done a lot of sequels. One thing we've realized with Kim Kardashian, Deer Hunter, and that's true, I think, the ecosystem with Clash of Clans and other games which are making and top grossing for 2-3 years in a row, is we're not going to keep making sequels. First of all, sequels are expensive, more expensive. And the whole downloadability.
More expensive to build or market?
Yeah, because you have to first figure out, do I stop developing this game, which is still making so much money, and then move all the resources or hire a brand new team to build a sequel?
I've always wondered, what does a sequel even look like, in the sense that you already built this game engine, everything's kind of going. I mean, I'm not a big Deer Hunter player, my colleague is, but like, how different is Deer Hunter 2015 from 2014? Is it really a whole new game, or?
It's going to, so in that one, Deer Hunter 2016, it's going to be a lot of new things, a lot of cool stuff. Like, one of the things, like the multiplayer is non-existent and does not exist on Deer Hunter 2014. So that's going to be a big thing in terms of 2016. But from the Kim Kardashian point of view, like, we are not going to be making a sequel, but the game has a very decent user base. It stays and it monetizes. Instead, we are focused on, again, keeping it along the lines with our TV show and cameos. We had her entire family in there, like, one by one, and I can promise you there will be a few more cameos this year, which I cannot name, but there will be.
By the way, your quarterly earnings statement for Glue is like in 5 hours.
It's like 12 hours, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
There'll be some juicy stuff.
I can't wait. So you mentioned multiplayer just now. So do you guys have any other multiplayer stuff out now? And I wonder if you could talk about cross-platform. That seems to be something. I saw Mark Pincus give a talk like a year or two ago saying that they tried to do that with Farmville across devices, and it just failed miserably, and it was an expensive disaster. But then I feel like I'm reading that people are doing it more and more now, that it can be successful. I don't know where you guys are with that.
Definitely. I think we are committed to it. Racing Rivals is our biggest cross-platform success, and that game actually is top 25 grossing on Google Play, and is the highest grossing racing game.
This was a studio you guys acquired recently, right?
Yes, like almost a year now. And one of the key things which we noticed with that game is when they launched on Google Play almost a year after they launched on iOS, the revenue on iOS also doubles because of that. So cross-platform with Facebook, of course, as Facebook Connect as the bridge which brings everybody together. When users, if you're building a multiplayer game, you need to give your players other players to match up with.
Is that asynchronous? So I'm not familiar with this. So if you're saying that Racing Rivals has Facebook integrated, so yes. I can play against you already, iOS, Android.
Yes, you can take your progress across platforms yourself, and you can compete with your friend on any other platform. So you went from like having 1 million users you could play against to 2 million users you can play against, and your probability of matching up with somebody goes up, and it's just that's what makes multiplayer games more fun.
Is it real-time multiplayer, the
yep.
racing? Okay.
Yep. And yeah, exactly. Like that's key, and then we're gonna make sure that happens in terms of, there was some talks in early on in my early days where platforms were not okay with currencies flying back and forth. That has changed. I mean, pretty much all successful games like Candy Crush and whatnot may let you take everything across Facebook, across Amazon.
So what are the major tools that developers here could use if they want to build a multiplayer game kind of off the shelf? It sounds like Facebook, Google Play games, I've heard.
So yes, for Facebook is like the Facebook Connect, like, the Facebook sign-in is kind of brings things together. You can have your email sign-in. That also works, but we rely on Facebook for the cross-platform angle. In terms of having the multiplayer technology, it all depends. Like, I think for small developers, like the Google and Apple offerings is probably good enough for their first iteration. But we've gotten to a point where, as awesome as those guys are, they can't keep up with our roadmap of how crazy we want to go with our multiplayer
Define
games.
crazy. What kind of features
It's
do
just
they not
features
have?
like multiple leaderboards across, different teams in the game, and it's just not the same how it used to be. And with those, as you probably see in the Asian games like the MMORPGs, they're even more intense, the multiplayer competition and the security around it, the anti-hacking, all those things come into play. Which
I read something I never had read about Game of War, actually, from Machine Zone, that they tried to do some kind of multiplayer thing that even Clash of Clans doesn't have, that people all over the world, some server thing, I don't know, we didn't talk about this if you've read this before, where it's synchronous gameplay, real-time gameplay, but somebody in Korea can play somebody in Mexico seamlessly. So it seems like there's a lot of back-end stuff there.
Yes, and
people.
we did that too, with Racing Rivals, and it's actually pretty funny where we do it where there's this group of people who play with each other and it's Racing Rivals, and there's these turf wars, and they will wait for the people in US to get up, and they're over in London so that they can get their team together and then compete.
So you guys have had a huge success with Kim Kardashian Hollywood. We've covered that a bit. You've been at Glue a long time. What are some games that have, you've had big expectations or you've been excited about the launch, and for whatever reason they haven't panned out, and maybe what you guys have learned from
There are none.
No, there are none at all.
No,
right?
none. So I think one of them was Motocross Meltdown, which launched in the beginning of 2014. That game we were all very excited about. Amazing graphics. And the downloadability part of that game was actually pretty good too. And then
I remember it ranking pretty high.
Yeah,
actually.
it ran up to number one. But the retention and monetization, because of the controls of the game, turned out to be the one-touch thing we had going did not work. So that was sort of a disappointment. So there's so many things in beta testing, user testing, all of those things. We're doing much better now. So we can't afford to have too many of those, because if you go 8 months into development and you find out your game does not download, that's pretty bad. Or you go 1 year into development and you launch it and it downloads but makes no money, that's even worse.
Our CEO BlueStack says volume begets all sins. So if you have volume, you have the downloads, you figure it out, right? But you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. I had another question that I've forgotten. So what would you recommend, sticking with Kim for a second? So, there's a lot of IP-related stuff coming out, right? There's even the Kate Upton association with Machine Zone. There's all these Hello Kitty games, Marvel stuff. It seems to be everywhere. Should indie developers in the UK, be signing up, footballers and people calling local, Big Brother contestants? Or how much do you feel like developers should be jumping on this trend or not?
We should be signing up footballers too. So the download problem has gotten tougher and tougher, right? So that's where we went with this model of you can spend a lot of money on advertising, on user acquisition. I bet there's a lot of ad networks here helping with that problem, but the market is getting saturated with these games. So getting a brand behind definitely helps with that initial install problem, or the continuous install problem. Would I recommend an indie developer to go do that? It's a tough market. I mean, once you have a proven success, you can start with somebody smaller, but you have to make it successful. And once you do, you will see that, once people heard that Kim Kardashian made $43 million in the first 3 months, the problem for us wasn't are we going to be able to get more celebrities to sign up? It was more do we have the capacity for the number of people kind of even approaching us to want to build a game with us, because they think Glue can now build a celebrity successful game. So it definitely helps.
There was a Lindsay Lohan clone of the game. I just remembered that. I don't think it was as successful. Weren't there Kim clones or other developers trying to?
Oh yeah, they're definitely they're all trying to cash in. And I mean, I think what we did with Kim Kardashian is we kind of started this new genre and new audience, which nobody thought. It's I like to call it looks like a female version of Clash of Clans, in terms of nobody really thought how much spending power that demographic, if you build the right game, can have, and that's what's happening here. So now we know with Candy Crush and now with Kim Kardashian that there is that audience which is hungry for content as well.
I want to talk about Android a little bit. I mean, you have lived Android since, I think, before it even came out, right? Yeah. And, it's. I remember when it came out, and it was deeply unsexy. There were no cool Android phones. It was an afterthought for developers. Everybody was building for iOS first, and times have really changed, right? I mean, that graph with showing iOS growth volume-wise and Android growth is pretty compelling. I think Android now is like 4x the volume worldwide of iOS. How have you seen things develop over the past few years on the Android side, and where do you see things headed in the next year or two, or where do you want things to head?
I always thought Android was sexy, so I never owned an iOS device. So yes, I was actually the engineer on the first game, 2 games we made for Android even before it came out, and we kind of launched with it. So I used to sit there, cry in my office when Apple was making 10, 50, 100 times more money, but stuck with it. Google figured out, the OS, the devices got better. Samsungs of the world helped a lot, right, with the distribution. So now we're at a point that what Android is lacking in terms of like per user monetization, it is making up with installs, where almost you can get with the right game 2 to 3 times the number of installs, just like how the percentage is divided with the user base. So that's where still Android battle is won, is with more and more installs.
But on a per phone basis, is it still a big gap in terms of the
There is
monetization?
a decent gap,
Yeah?
yes. There is,
Is it closing at all?
It's been closing fast. And I think as Google is working hard to bring on more monetizations like billing systems with carrier billings and gift cards and whatnot, it's definitely helping. And I think it's just ecosystem maturing as well. Like once people get comfortable spending that $2 in the game, let's like they go to a bar and spend $10. Like my wife uninstalled Candy Crush because she had to spend $2. I'm like, but that pays the bills. Go spend that money. So I think it's as people are getting more and more around that, that's helping too. And with Android users and with iOS, I think iOS guys were always spending on iTunes, so they had a much longer head start with credit cards on file and getting people to just spend that $1, $2 on music. So Google had some catching up to do. Now they have a lot more volume in terms of installs for us in a game which has similar demographic, not Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian is still female heavy, and in US, that's iOS.
How do you see the demographics of Google and iOS when you launch the same game on both platforms? How do you see them differing?
So if the demographic is not targeting women heavily like Kim Kardashian game is, you download a lot more on Google Play. But for that one, we're still trying to figure it out, and I encourage every girl in the room to buy an Android device.
So Google skews guys, iOS girls.
Yes. Well, I think iOS also has a lot of guys.
Yeah. What about spenders? There's this idea that and we talked about the monetization gap, that the whales are on iOS, but I'm sure you must see some whales on.
Oh,
Android
no, yeah.
as well.
So we try to avoid using that term for Kim Kardashian, whales. Like for the Kim Kardashian game, but there are some big spenders in that game on the Android side in terms of that the average revenue per paying user is almost the same.
By the way, I was at a developer once, and they had printouts from the printer of faces on the wall. It was like a lineup. And I asked them, and there were like numbers written on them. I was like, what are these? And it was a casino developer. And the CEO said, these are our whales. And they actually reach out to them. They invite them to the office, all this stuff. Have you guys ever done any of that stuff?
Oh yeah, we have done it for a couple of games. We do social campaigns where we encourage, and we've done VIP campaigns where we find the guy who has spent more than $1,000 or $2,000 in our game, and give him some special treatment, some love.
Nice. Do you guys do any research for the game? We talked about sort of metrics to look at. What about before a game is launched? How do you guys decide whether to go forward with a game or not? Do you talk with users even after the game is launched? Do you ever have user interviews or any of that kind of stuff online?
So we rely heavily on reviews, and now we've invested in a customer care system, HelpShift, where there is in-app, like you can reach out to our customer care team to have even chat back and forth if they're live, and depending on how much money you have spent in the game, the tier of service you get is also going.
Is this like live chat on the web, but
well, no, it's
on
all
the phone?
in the app. It's just like a button you say. There's FAQs, and people reach out to us, and we have forums on the web where we have moderators who constantly, we have even done social campaigns where we ask what's the next car you want to see.
But what about before the game launches? Like, how do you guys ideate? I know Half Brick has these like Friday meetings where anybody can suggest a game. How does Glue come up with games?
So there's a whole, like, there's few different things. We have 4 or 5 genres where we do well, right? So it's the experimental one, but we are right now focused more on an engine which we know works, and also trying to an IP which we know it works, and then we work on evolving that in some way. So the ideas like fly in. We do in our offsites Shark Tank like things as well, like where anybody is able to like pitch their ideas. But in the end, like the way, like I was saying from the beginning, the KPIs is this going to download is like the most important, and the first question which is asked before anything, like prove that you think there is a market out there, and then try to predict how much per user revenue you're going to make, and then look at the final number. When then we have some idea of the rough cost, okay, it's not going to pay for itself.
There's that lean startup methodology where if you have an idea for a company, you run Google AdWords ads for it and just see what the clicks are. I wonder if there's an equivalent in the
that's
mobile
the secret
world.
sauce.
That's the secret sauce.
But I mean, obviously, like again, I think I'd encourage every developer out there to do that. I mean, there are a lot of ad networks now which can facilitate that. Facebook is, in the beginning for betas, like our key partner there, but there are ways, yes, exactly, like you can do name testing, your icon testing,
How?
your screenshot testing. You just try out a lot of icons and put them out there and
when
see
the game
people
launches,
click on
just see what, or even before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are ways. I mean, you can think about it, right? Like you can have products. You have existing products.
Yeah.
Like if we have Deer Hunter 2014, and then we're about to launch 2016, we can, if we wanted to see for the test an icon for the new one, you can test it in your older games too, right?
Yeah.
So it's just there's a lot of ways. Like, but then yes, make sure that your game will do well, like
Get the downloads.
install-wise. Yes.
Yeah, I've always thought there should be a like a keyword tool. Google has for AdWords, like how many people are searching for this term. Like I have a friend whose casino app is like a top 3 rank for bingo. If you search bingo, his thing comes up. And apparently, if you were there early, you stay there. There's a whole algorithm to that too. But there's no way to actually see if somebody searches Hollywood, like how many people are searching for that yet. But if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be Google.
Yeah, and we ask for that in every
really?
every meeting with our Google Play team, which about the same. Like there could be Google Play ads around those keywords.
Oh, like
right?
sponsored, like an AdWords inside Google Play.
I know everybody in the room will be very happy
Yeah.
to pay for something like that. If somebody searches Hollywood, we are more than happy for Kim Kardashian Hollywood to be the first search result.
Why don't they do that?
I have to go work there to find out. But I think Google is a big company. They have a lot of good plans.
I wonder if it's a conflict of
I
interest
hope-
thing, maybe, if they're doing, they are kind of already doing their own advertising with AdMob, right?
No, I don't see a conflict of interest. I mean, Facebook has games on their platform. They take 30% from that, and then they have ads too.
Yeah.
Right, to drive users to the Facebook Canvas game. So
Yeah, I guess it's no different than AdWords.
yeah.
You mentioned categories. There's a lot of people in the audience probably thinking about what game to launch next. Should it be a hardcore game, midcore game? You guys are unique in that you have very casual stuff. You have stuff in every kind of subcategory. What do you find works better in terms of making money? Is it all kind of even, or how do you guys decide whether to launch a casual Kim-like title next or a Contract Killer 4?
All of the above, like you. So of course, diversification is key for us. We're a public company. Like get looked at a lot about like, oh, it's just a one-hit wonder or not. But the best is the best of the both worlds is Kim Kardashian game, for example, where it downloaded well and it monetizes well. But you're not always going to get that. So you need to, if you're building a game, for example, the hardcore ones, your monetization has to be through the roof per user. Because if you're only going to have 100,000, 200,000 people in the game, you must make a lot of money from them, right? So both of those have been solved, and we invest in both, and that's the diversification. But if you hit, both of those right, that's jackpot.
We talked about Android and iOS a bit a moment ago. How do you guys decide which platform to launch on first? That's a decision every developer has to make nowadays, or do you launch at the same time?
So we always launch on the same time. Like that's without fail for Glue.
Same
for
day.
Almost same day and day updates, everything for last, ever since I took over the team 4 or 5 years ago. So that's not changing. The challenges for us sometimes now are which platform do we do beta testing on, because we will do beta testing in some key countries, like 4 or 5 months before the game comes out. So that is now what we look at the demographics. So if we're making a game which skews Asia, we want to do Android.
What are your
first.
favorite soft launch countries right now on Android, for example?
Though might get in trouble for this. But it's pretty obvious to find out from App Annie. But I think you kind of try to hit like demographics. So like if we all have our big markets. There's U.S., there's Korea, there's Japan. So you try to find countries which are similar to U.S. So there's Canada, and then the Europeans. There's Sweden, Switzerland, and then there's of course in Asia there's also some smaller countries you can target to kind of get an idea of the gamers, which are going to be similar when you go big in China, Korea, and Japan.
We talked about Android a bit. So Lollipop is out. I just read that after 3 months, it's on 1.6% of devices, a little bit slower rollout than people thought. When a new OS comes out for Android, what do you guys have to do? Do you have to jump on it? Do you make changes? And then tell us about Lollipop and kind of how it's gone and what the opportunities are there.
I have my device. So yes, it's a little bit slower, but the thing is Google puts everything behind it. And in our partnership with them, we cannot afford not to support it. So it is actually a requirement if you're an indie developer or any developer and you approach Google's editorial board to say, hey, can you look at my game? I think it deserves some love. You're not getting any unless it works on Lollipop, and it works perfectly on Lollipop. So as a developer, you don't have an option. You must support it, and I highly encourage that everybody does. But in terms of and even if it's not a big chunk of the revenue now, it's going to get there. Just like the other ones before did in like a year maybe. And of course, a lot of that destiny is controlled by, again, the Samsungs and the HTCs of the world. Is not necessarily Google's.
Does pretty much every Android operating system at some point get a huge share? I remember that tablet honeycomb thing a long time ago. It never went anywhere. But in general, does every OS it just takes time? Yeah,
it takes time. The ones before Ice Cream Sandwich and whatnot are those are the 40-50% each or something right now. So it will get there. But as a developer, you have to support them. Also, the people who are early adopters are the ones who are very vocal as well. So if you don't support Lollipop and your game crashes and doesn't look good, they're going to be leaving a lot of bad reviews too. So I think it's in our best interest to keep our games up to date.
You mentioned your partnership with Google as you described it. I know that you guys are a top 10 grossing developer, so you meet with them often, meet with the Play Store team. What are you telling them? What are your hopes and dreams for the Play Store? If you ran it, what would you change?
Oh, that would be awesome. So I think user acquisition for us, in terms of, so most of the times we just give recommendations around how, with our ideas of how they can help reduce the clutter, but at the same time help us get those targeted installs better. So Google, of course, has all those categories, which is definitely helping. So it's more along, hey, can we have some Google Play search ads, for example? That's a big thing for us to be able to get installs. More featuring slots in terms of there's one section, there's new and updates, the top 3 games get highlighted. And we want the ability to have more, maybe a little carousel rolling around. So those are the kind of things we ask for, in terms of there's a lot of good games out there, and it's just how can we get that top slot?
How do they think about featuring? So that's something definitely a lot of people here, I'm sure, have tried to contact Google or gotten their game featured before. You guys, I'm sure, have an audience with them whenever you want to get featured. Can you give us any insight about how Google decides what to feature?
So the insights was they have a page about guidelines on the website, and
that's the official version.
That's the official
unofficial version.
Oh, I get so much trouble. So definitely quality is very important, right? So do not cheap out on that. Anything less than 4.0, your chances of getting featured are not that bright. So keep an eye on quality, your device coverage. Make sure every Nexus device works well, works on the latest OSs. That is the beginning. Now, of course, those guys feature so many games, so they are interested in seeing, if your game actually is gonna retain and gonna get downloads if it is put out there. So those are some key metrics. Of course, they will not reveal. And I have never actually met anybody in the editorial board. So the people we work with, I think I don't even know who they are. And no, like that, those, and I think that's true for across both platforms. I mean, there is an editorial committee, and I think when we work with our guys at Google Play, it's mostly like a recommendation. So what happens behind closed doors is a mystery, and then what ends up getting there. But we hope that we know to some extent that we will make it. It's just not where will we land up, and how much they actually love the game or not. Like, we can't tell.
I feel like looking at the Play Store on my phone, it's gotten more personalized. Like, they keep making these changes, and it's gotten more fragmented. I've heard developers say that featuring is more difficult. There's not like one giant tile. So what are the features that exist today that people should aim for? Like, I see that this is new and updated apps at the top. Then there's like most popular. I don't know which ones of those that they're actually personalizing. I don't know if they've said, or like what would be different on our phones and what would be the same, I guess.
I mean, that's very easy to find out, right, if we just looked at ours. So I think there are a few which are permanent, and honestly, that's a very welcome thing which Google is doing, because again, we have seen when sometimes we have not gotten like a great slot, but we're still getting a healthy stream of installs. And I think that's a lot because of the targeted featuring, or whatever they're doing in terms of not spam every user with the same set of games.
Oh, you're saying the featuring is actually kind of opaque. You know you're getting featured, but you don't know. It might just be for a huge chunk of the population.
There's a couple of categories where it's not, right? There it's there and it's the same for everybody. It's the same slot for everybody. But then there's a lot of other ones where it's targeted based to what you play, like what you've been playing on Google Play, and that's my guess again. I mean, I hope that is the case because that's what I see on my phone.
Right.
And that is definitely helping get more installs than we usually would during a featuring week. I think it's just all of those categories, they're different for everybody and are based on what other things you do and some algorithms they have in the back end. It's just similar to like what Facebook does a pretty good job with targeting on with their user acquisition systems. So actually,
you mentioned that Google will look at how well the game is doing from retention, different standpoints. You're running engineering there for Android. I've heard so different answers, but definitively, can you tell us? Do you know what Google can see and not see? Like, they can see how many downloads an app has gotten. They can see how much money it's made. But can they see the internal metrics of the game, like 7-day retention or activity, or how much of that actually feeds back to Google? I've had people tell me that they don't see any of it, and people tell me they see everything.
So if you integrate Google Plus sign in, right, that's Google Play Game Services, I can see all that information at that point in the Google Play portal in terms of retention. Yeah. Now, what kind of oath they have in terms of logging into developers' accounts and seeing that, like a lot of the times, our guys will ask us for that information. And I think maybe internally they don't log into users' accounts.
You're saying Google will ask you guys?
Yeah, and we're like, whoa, this stuff is there already. Why? So I can't speak for what kind of oath of privacy they have internally in terms of not logging into a developer account. And
I think the guy who told me that they don't see everything told me it is a privacy matter.
Yeah, most likely that's why, right? That's why the information is on the developer portal for us to see. Mm-hmm. So in this situation, if they could see, but I don't think they do. So
we talked about the advertising that they could do, sponsored apps and things like that. They have AdMob. They bought it years and years ago. It seems very broken. I don't think I've ever met a publisher or developer that loves AdMob. Apple's even worse. iAd. I don't even know if it's still going. Why do you think that these two world-class platforms have such bad ad networks, and do you see that changing anytime soon?
You said it, not me. So I think big companies, and they got busy on the platform side, and that might have distracted. But I mean, those guys are definitely. We meet with both the teams, and met with iAds recently as well. They're definitely picking up, and they're making a comeback. But yes, there's a lot of ad networks here also. It's just when your core business is that and only that, you tend to be able to kick ass. And Facebook, of course, came from nowhere, and it's I will say the industry best at this point in terms of acquiring users, and even through the Facebook audience network, they monetize pretty well too with their interstitials. So Yes, my hope, and this is again is in our every meeting with Google, is given the information they have about the user, that they will eventually build a top-notch ad network as well, both of them.
And Amazon has built some ad thing, I think, but I'm not familiar with it. But talk to me about Amazon. You guys, every Glue game, you guys build separately for Amazon. What's behind that decision, and how do you see the future of that platform shaping up?
So cross-platform strategy, of course, like I was mentioning earlier, like more users, the better, is what's behind it. More revenue, the better. Users monetize pretty decent on Amazon as well. Like, they don't have the same install base, but they do monetize well. And again, like I was saying with Android, right? When we were behind it and I was developing for Android, when it was making, $500 a day, you kind of invest with the company. And Amazon as a company has, a decent track record that when they just came out with that first Kindle tablet, which brought the 7-inch tablet, right, to the market. Nobody else was doing it. Then Google copies, and then Apple also comes out with their 7-inch, right? So it's kind of an investment partnership where revenue is decent, not a lot.
Is it growing, or has it moved up or down over the years? It's been out a few years now.
Yeah, it's definitely is growing. It's there in install base. I mean, the user base is also a little bit different, a little more casual at times. So
I assume it skews female.
Yes. So all of those plays in. So Kim Kardashian, does pretty decent there. So yes, we're invested with the platform. We're going to keep, any users. Like, it's when you get a successful game, you got to milk it, right? You got to go after every single dollar out there.
But is it not a big overhead to build a separate APK for Amazon? Or?
No, at this point for us it is not. And I mean, it's Android in the end, and those tablets now they have pretty powerful too. So it's not much.
Now, being head of all cross-platform, are there other platforms worth a mention? Are you guys building stuff for Windows? And I think you guys had a Google Glass app, and there's wearables coming out. What other platforms interest you?
So Facebook, again, is a key partner. Amazon. Microsoft, we're working. Like, we don't have any thing with them right now, but we're always in talks, and also we have long-lasting relationship with those guys. So anytime we see the dollars, we will be running there too. And again, it's a big company. It's about investing in the company and having faith that one day they will figure it out.
It's a chicken or the egg thing, though, right? The users and the money is not going to come to that platform unless the games come. So they have a tough thing.
I mean, it happened. Android did not need the games, right? So I think it's about making something which will be sexy, some people want to buy, is what is going to drive.
Oh, so now iWatch is coming out, and all these sexy wearables and toys.
You wait till when iWatch comes out, everybody's going to get the Android smartwatch too. Then it's going to be okay wearing these things. So
is that an Android smartwatch?
Yeah. So it's I think that's the next. Yeah. So we did the Google Glass game again. We also try to be cutting edge, a lot of new initiatives. It's relationships with the platforms.
It's good for PR anyway.
Yes, it was very good for PR. I have mine, and even though I think Google has temporarily stopped it, I think, and then Facebook has Oculus, of course. So wearables, I mean, you go to CES last 2 years, it's all about wearables, right? So I think it's just a matter of time. Few years ago, you would not have, thought that it will be socially okay to walk around like this all day, but now it is. So I think in the next couple of years, we'll see somebody will figure it out, and it'll be one of these guys, and we will be there.
You mentioned HelpShift earlier. Are there any other companies, some of which may be here, that, and actually if you can expand on HelpShift a little bit, because I've heard that name come up. It's basically like a support app. Any other guys that you kind of like or want to highlight?
So
in our space,
in terms of, that's the CRM company, and I think we're using them. Supercell is using them, so they're all we have had the volume of our tickets. Like, our customer care team is pretty happy in terms of being able to control the influx of user complaints.
It feels much better UX, right? If I'm in the app and I'm having a problem,
exactly,
and I can go right and talk to somebody rather than going and emailing on my computer or whatever.
So for us, the next step, the companies, we're evaluating a few of those products out there in terms of in-app forums and being able to, do chat with your friends. Like, it doesn't matter if it's chat with other players playing the game, even if it's not necessarily like you're competing with them. And the ability to not have to go to a website to a forum to go back and forth on ideas.
There's a lot of ad networks out here in the audience, I'm sure. What advice or what hopes and dreams do you have for monetization side, advertising side? What would you like to see people build?
So yeah, two angles, right? Monetization in terms of us making money from them. We have pretty much completely moved away from integrating individual ad networks and doing special deals for 2%, 5% extra, or even minimum guarantees, which was happening at one point.
Integrating meaning SDKs?
SDKs. So integrating meaning we're investing in mediations. Like I saw the name up there, MoPub is what we are currently like investing in and is going to be in our game. So what I will encourage all the ad networks is you can, we can hang out, but I won't be able to do anything like in terms of like being able to put your SDK in anymore. We have to work with MoPub and get your MoPub adapter done or whatever other mediation platform to make sure that in server-side mediation is even better. So we don't have to, even drop your binary, your library into the game. But definitely, mediation is the way to go for Glue. So our guys, we have guys who are expert in like optimizing the ad revenue, and those guys want more control, and we want less bugs. So it just works. And the second part was user acquisition. Yeah, so like UA. Buying users. So from that, and this might just sound greedy, but it's not. Our VP of advertising, gets harassed, of course, like with a lot of ad networks approaching, saying we're the best. So the approach we have taken there is, we ask like if there is some seed UA money, those guys will be willing to give us to say, here's some $10,000 worth of credit.
Yeah.
And I think you tried something similar. So, and it works, right? It works. And this is the way to go, right? Because it's very hard.
There's 100 people approaching you all the time.
Exactly.
Right?
And then these guys have to invest. We have to do legal contracts. And then the installs are too expensive and it doesn't work, right? So we really like that. Here's that $10,000. You try buying installs from us. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, then it'll be stupid for us to not then spend more money with that ad network, right?
Categories we talked about, and start thinking of questions. I'd love to give you guys the opportunity to ask Sourabh anything you want to know. A lot of developers seem to be becoming publishers. I remember Rovio, I read, made a huge shift to saying, hey, we're a publisher now. It feels like there's a lot of people running around looking for good games to publish. Have you guys ever purely published something? It seems to me from the outside that when you want to publish something, you acquire it, like Play First or C Games. So what's the strategy there?
No, so we have definitely, we have that arm of like the third-party publishing. We have done it. It's just that it's not our focus anymore. And one thing, and this is probably thanks to Google and Apple, is while being Glue will definitely help an indie developer in terms of getting it featured and that the user acquisition muscle we can throw behind it. One of the things we've noticed is when you have that Flappy Bird on your hands or Crossy Road, like most of the times the indie developer also knows, and that those are not the kind of games which we get offered to publish, right? We always get some second and third tier game which somebody's like, oh, can you publish this game under Glue's umbrella? And so we've seen, we have done a few and it has not worked out. So it's definitely not of high importance for us right now.
You guys aren't purely publishing. You either acquire it or you develop it in-house.
Yes. We buy, brands like Play First or Racing Rivals. Like that game was already in top 15, top 20 grossing. So that's the kind of investment we're happy to make, but we're not like necessarily getting behind indie developers to go, we will help you publish, because you don't get the A players from the indie world.
There's that, and there's a lot of BD overhead, I imagine, just the back and forth about the game.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for Sourabh? I'd love to give you guys the opportunity to ask him anything you like.
Well, maybe I can sort of start. Going back to the sort of Kardashians, we're all friends here. Can you tell us a little bit about the backstory and the sort of timeline? What happened? Was it push or pull? Did Kardashians agents come to you and say, hey, we've got this great idea for a game, can you develop it? Or did you have the game and then you pitched it to the Kardashians? Was it chicken or the egg? Which way around did it go?
So we already had a game, Stardom Hollywood, which was out there for a year and a half, and it was actually doing pretty well in terms of monetization. So that was our CEO's idea And given her popularity, her reality show, her fans, that if she was in the game as a coach, which, you know, instead of the arbitrary person who was there, she loved the idea, and that's how it started.
Okay, so it's phenomenally successful. In terms of monetization, was it fresh meat? Did you get in people who've never sort of played sort of games before, or was it existing gamers who sort of provided the money? What's the breakdown between new people and existing players?
I think it was a lot of fresh meat. That's what I was saying. We kind of like introduced this new genre of the 13 to 25 female, where they enjoyed this game a lot more in terms of like everybody says, oh, it's why you know, the game's so popular. I think it's more around teenagers wanting to make adult decisions, like going on a date, you know, going to work, making money, then shopping instead. And that's where, like, I think the success of the game comes from that demographic, which wasn't like, you know, playing Clash of Clans, for example.
Okay, so the next leading sort of question related to that, it's fresh meat have come in, they hadn't played games before, now you've excited them, they've opened their world to games. Have you checked the metrics downstream to find out, have you been able to cross-pollinate them and try them into other games, so you've brought in fresh gamers and now you can monetize them on the wings, or is it a kind of a one-hit wonder, they played just to play Kardashians and haven't done anything else?
We definitely hope that we can have the crossover, and we have a few in the works. And I mean, fair to say, after what that game has done, this will be the year of celebrity games. I think the session before us was also about that, right?
Well, I'm going to say, not just celebrity games. Have you brought them in with the celebrity and then managed to convert them over into hidden object games or sliding block puzzles or sort of anything else? Have you moved them over?
No, we have not even tried that, right? We are not. So that game, the audience there is very loyal, and I think in this also niche in terms of they are probably the celebrity gamers. So we haven't tried to take them. We don't have any other casual game along those lines. We did, you know, take a little bit to Diner Dash when we launched Diner Dash, which is also a casual game. But I think, yes, the celebrity brand is going to be key to move those guys. I mean, we don't want to move them. We're going to keep updating that game. It's going to be just more celebrities most likely added to the existing game.
Okay, please raise your hand if you have questions. We have the great speakers here. Don't be shy. No. So we asked the question sort of previously. So you're going to stick in this sort of genre. Are you now sort of reaching out to new celebrities, or have you found that celebrities now coming knocking on your door saying, hey, we've seen what happens? So again, what's the ratio between sort of people coming to you and you going out to other people?
Oh, you always have to reach out to celebrities. No, so we see both. Like, we definitely, like I was saying before, the success of Kim Kardashian has helped, you know, establish the name out there that these guys can make it. A good game for us. In general, I think this was a study out there too that mobile games made more money, or mobile, revenue in general made more money than Hollywood in the last year. And I think Hollywood itself is feeling the pain, and they see that there's an avenue here for them to make up for those reduced DVD sales and reduced movie sales because of all the things which has happened to that industry. So this has become meaningful for them now. Mobile games so it's not that hard. So
can you tell us secrets? Are you actually working on another celebrity game at the moment? Or would that be too much of a trade secret to tell us?
Oh, 12 hours.
12 hours.
The earnings call, those announcements are left for our CEO.
Your so in general, are celebrities sort of prima donnas to deal with? Are there additional things that you have to sort of go through in terms of review checks? Is it harder to get things done, or is your experience just as easy as regular products?
I think it's not. I mean, you can't say easy. I think it's more fun and also more challenging, and you do kind of want that. If you get a celebrity license where they just go, you know what, here's my name, take it, make me some money. Probably, so in case of Kim Kardashian Hollywood game, she's very involved. She knows what her fans want, and she has creative input every step of the way, right? So that helps.
Okay, we have some questions now. Please wait for the microphone for the camera.
Hi.
You're number 2.
Okay. So thank you. The Kim Kardashian game, to me, seems to have one of the best, more interesting integrations with Twitter that I've seen, where you're sort of sending out tweets, players are sending out tweets, and I'm wondering if you could talk about sort of, is that something that you got a lot of success out of? Do you see a lot of virality from that? Is that something you think you could see value in with other games, or does it have to do with just like Kim's obvious huge Twitter following?
So that is a big factor, right? And that's where it came from. The fact that Kim has a huge Twitter following, it just naturally leads itself into having that tight Twitter integration. Where we even have the feature of you can have your in-game selfie, posted on Twitter and Facebook. So that helps. But and then that definitely kicks in the virality too. Now in the next version, if we're making a celebrity game, most likely is because they have huge Twitter following. So I think definitely worth looking into. I mean, we have seen what good social integration can do to a game like Trivia Crack, which is ruling the charts right now, and their Facebook heavy social integration is also helping. So definitely there's value there. But yeah, Kim's Twitter following was the big factor in that game.
Thank you. Compared to indie developers, what is the size of the team working on Kim Kardashian, or what are the positions in that team?
So I have 12 years at Glue. So I started in employee number 25. So I guess we can call us then indie developers. So if that indie developer team size is 6 to 7, it's close to 15 to 20 for a game like Kim Kardashian.
I've heard that the Clash of Clans team is not that much bigger than that. The actual engineers working on it's like 15 people.
Yeah,
maybe that's mythology.
Yeah, I think it's so a lot of the times these things now depend on timeline. Like if we're making the Terminator game and the Bond game, our timeline is kind of set on when the movie's coming out. So you have to have more people to make sure you meet the date, given that when the deals get signed from how much time we have. When you're starting new, you're an indie developer, you kind of set your own timeline. You don't have to live quarter by quarter, earnings by earnings to make sure you meet your numbers and you have growth. So.
By the way, the next question about celebrities: do you guys have Daniel Craig for Bond?
I don't know. Do we?
I don't know. 12 hours?
Yeah, 12 hours. But we definitely have Bond, and Daniel Craig or not, we will see. It's a surprise.
I got to check how many Twitter followers he has. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, as much as your hands are probably tied by the earnings sort of call that's going to come out, can you give us an idea about the breakdown of the payers? Is it a small number of people who pay a lot of money, or is it fairly uniformly distributed where there's a lot of people who pay a small amount of money? And how does it compare to other games that you've done, if you can't give us the exact figures?
Oh, no, so that is a known fact, that it is a small, that's one of the key reasons why free-to-play works so much better than paid, right? You go look at top grossing, it's all pretty much free to play, and that is because we know that there is a small percentage. That percentage is a little bit higher on iPhones versus Android phones, but it ranges between 1 to 10% of the total ecosystem, not necessarily in the game, right? In the games you have the minnows and the whales. Sometimes you have a lot of small amount of revenue. In case of Kim Kardashian, people who pay tend to spend a decent amount of money.
Okay, we're all in this sort of free-to-play games business, so we
right.
understand the curves. What I'm trying to find, since it's a fresh audience, I want to know, do those audience monetize at roughly the same sort of kind of curves that traditional free-to-play games do? Or since people have come there just because of the Kardashian name, who said don't play the other games, do they monetize on the same curve is what I'm trying to ask.
I think for us, they monetize better than our other free-to-play games like Deer Hunter. And they definitely, the core audience wasn't thinking I think along the same lines, or wasn't as frugal, and that could be equated to somebody goes and buys a Louis Vuitton bag versus Coach, where they were just, I want this and I'm gonna go for this, spend it. So there is definitely a lot of big spenders in that game.
And have you ever shared the demographics of the spenders or the players? Female biased, or you've mentioned
Female
teenagers. What's the age brackets as well? As much
so
as
the
you can give away.
age is 13 to 25, 13 to 30 is the demographic, and it is very obvious. It is very female heavy, yes.
Okay. And what about localization? What markets are you available, and which languages do you choose?
So we are available across all markets, but in terms of localization, currently we have not done much for that game. There's a very text-heavy game and very US heavy. While her TV show does get dubbed in some European countries, and I think in Spain and Brazil, so we are looking into it, but currently we have not invested in any sort of deep localization from English to any other language because of just the nature of where she is most popular. But her worldwide popularity of the show, the TV show, is picking up. So, and even, I think the thing is, even where it is picking up, most people like the English version there as well. And they're reading subtitles of some sort. But, so yeah, for that game, we're not localizing. But every other Glue game, we localize like to 14, 15 languages. And it's very important.
Last question.
Hi, you mentioned that multiplayer will be a focus for Glue. How important is it to connect users through the platform, things like Game Center and Google Play services? And also, what is a good Facebook integration?
So, how important is, so I think most of the game developers have kind of graduated away from using Game Center, and but they still, so if you're an indie developer, you don't want to invest a lot of money in building your multiplayer infrastructure because it's a very straightforward multiplayer game. Yes, for all means, I think Google Plus or Game Center could solve it for you. Google Plus is also cross-platform, so you can do it for iOS too. But in terms of the scale of our multiplayer games, we have our own backend, we have our own server systems. Sometimes we have to migrate save data from the previous version of the game to the next one. So we rely on Facebook purely as an authentication system in terms of because Facebook is one thing right now, which is on every device, every platform you pick, and people tend, when they're desktops, you have your Kindle Fire, you have your iOS, tablet, and Android phone. So from that perspective, just making sure that when I sign in with Facebook in the game, I'm the same user across all of these platforms. That's the best integration. And then the rest, you just have your backend systems handle the multiplayer, matchmaking, and connectivity, everything.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, thank you very much.
I think he's got a follow-up.
Follow-up.
So using Facebook and being so reliant on it, does that mean that certain markets are restricted because Facebook isn't such a big platform in those markets?
No, so okay, let me backtrack. We always do Facebook and email. So the email is for that very reason, right? So of course, user has the option. They don't want to share their Facebook, information with us. The email is always there. So yes, we do have both, but we're not encouraging platform-specific ones, but those two because we want the ability for him to be able to take it across all.
Are you guys on Kakao or Line or ever considered those kind of publishers in Asia?
I think we've had mini stunts with them, but nothing for now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
It's now officially lunch.